These are practice problems for topic 1, part 2, and in these practice problems you have 4 linear equations, but you notice that these linear equations all have fractions involved. So we're going to look at how to solve these linear equations when there are fractions involved. Okay, so let's look at number 1. Now, the first thing you want to do whenever you have a linear equations and there are fractions involved is notice the denominators. So there are 4 terms here, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 terms, and take a look at the denominators. So this denominator is the integer 2, this is 3, this is 3, and you can write this as 5 divided by 1. But many students don't. They just leave it as 5. Now, what you want to also notice is that all of these problems involve whole numbers. So 2, 3, 3. There are no variables in the denominator. So that's going to be another topic. But in this case, you only have, in your denominators, you only have whole numbers. There aren't any variables involved in the denominator. So what you want to do first is find the least common denominator. So the least common denominator. Now you can use any common denominator, but you want to use the least. The least will make things easier for you. So if you look at the denominators, you have 2, 3, 3, and 1. And so the smallest number that 2, 3, 3, and 1 go into is 6. So 2 goes in a 6, 3 goes in a 6, 3 goes in a 6, 1 goes in a 6. Okay? So the least common denominator here is 6. Once you find the least common denominator, here's the process you need to show me. All right, so I need to see this. So notice there are 2 terms on this side, and there are 2 terms on this side. So what I want you to do is to rewrite this equation. So just go ahead and rewrite it, just like this. And so I'm just going ahead and rewrite it. Now leave a little space here. So I'm going to have x divided by 3 minus 5. Now since there are 2 terms, since there's more than one term, put those in parentheses. All right, so remember, you have to use the properties of equality to solve this linear equation. Now what you want to do now, once you find the LCD, is to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So what you do to the left side, you do to the right side. Okay? So you got to keep this equation balanced. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. Now remember, the reason I put that in parentheses is because whenever you multiply both sides of a linear equation by the least common denominator, or any equation, doesn't have to be linear, every term has to be multiplied by 6. Every term has to be multiplied by the least common denominator. All right, now, so that's the next step. Now here's where some students get themselves into trouble. What they're going to do, what some students do, and this is a mistake, they will reduce the 2 with the 6. So they'll say 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to 6 is 3, and distribute the 3. But remember, you cannot do that, because remember what we just said was that every term has to be multiplied by 6, right? So that means that one third has to be multiplied by 6. But if you reduce first, you would have multiplied it by 3, and that's not correct. You had to multiply by 6. So the point's this: you must distribute first. So you must distribute first and then reduce. Distribute first, then reduce or simplify. Okay, so that's important. If you reduce first, you would have distributed a 3, and that would have been incorrect. Okay? All right, so that is a mistake that some students make. So be careful with that. Okay, now, so let's go ahead and rewrite it out. So again, be on the safe side. Do exactly like I'm doing. So you're going to say 6 times this term minus 6 times 1/3 equal 6 times x divided by 3 minus, and then 6 times 5. Just like this. So notice every term term is being multiplied by 6. All right, now let's go ahead and reduce now. So now we're going to reduce or simplify. Okay, so this is where you're going to say 2 into 2 is 1, 2 divided to 6 is 3. And then you're going to say 3. Now, y'all remember 3x divided by 1 is 3x. So 3 times 3x is 9x minus, okay, reduce here now. 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. So on the left side, I now have 9x minus 2. So the whole purpose of multiplying the equation by multiplying both sides of the equation by 6 is to get rid of these denominators. So when you get rid of the denominators, you notice I'm going to end up with a factor of 1. In every case, a factor of 1. And so that's the idea of clearing the fractions. Sometimes we refer to this as clearing the fractions. All right, so again, notice, if you're doing this correctly and you're multiplying both sides by the least common denominator, this factor in the denominator should become a 1. And it does. So look on this side. 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 6 is 2. So I get a factor of 1. Okay, and this already had a factor of 1, remember? Okay, so 2 times x is 2x minus, and then 6 times 5 is 30. So now notice, I went from a linear equation with fractions to a linear equation without fractions, and now this is the easy kind. This, remember in the idea of equivalent equations. So the solution to this equation is the same as the solution to this equation. So this equation, all these equations here are equivalent. So meaning that if I can find the solution to this equation, then it's going to be the same as the solution to this equation. All right, now remember, when solving a linear equation, you're going to bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other. So again, we're using the properties of equality to do this. So I want to bring the 2x term to the other side. So to do that, I'm either going to have to add or subtract. So if I add 2x, you know that's not going to work because 2x plus 2x is 4x. So I want this to be a 0 here. So then I'm going to have to subtract 2x. So before you do anything, always check and see if it makes sense. 2x minus 2x is 0. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So if I put it here, I got to put it here. And then let's combine like terms. So 2x minus 2x is 0. 9x minus 2x is 7x. I get 7x minus 2 equal, and then 0 and a negative 30 is a negative 30. And then the next step is to bring the constants to the other side. So notice I'm subtracting 2. If I want this to become a 0, then I've got to add 2. So think of the opposite. If I'm subtracting 2, you're going to add 2. But what I do to the left, I do to the right. Now let's combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, I get 7x, this is 0, when I combine those, equal, and then a negative 30 plus 2 is a negative 28. Now again, if you're having some problems, and some students do, if you're having some problems with dealing with operations on signed numbers, just use your calculator. So negative 30 plus 2, negative 30 plus 2 equal negative 28. And then divide both sides by 7. So remember, you got to get x by itself. Now, remember, we said that all these are equivalent equations, right? So that means that every equation, so all these equations, they're going to have the same solution. So the solution to this, I simplified this to get to this point because there's no way I could have looked at this and determined the solution. So then let's go a little bit further with our properties. So then I got this. It's still a little bit more difficult to determine the solution. Then I got this. Now, many of you can look at this and say, hey, I know the solution to this equation. 7 times a negative 4 is a negative 28. You're right. So x equal negative 4 is going to be the solution to the original equation. But I want to see that next step. So I want to see where x actually is by itself. Okay, so notice I'm multiplying x by 7. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. So I get x equal negative 4. Okay, all right, so that is the solution to the original equation. Now, if you want to check this, you can. If you have time, you check it. You will not have time on a timed test or a timed final exam, but you do have time now to check this. I just want to check this one. I'm not going to check any of the others because of the time that we have in this video. But let's just check this. So I'm going to go back to the original problem. I'm going to rewrite it. So 3x divided by 2 minus 1/3 equal x divided by 3 minus 5. All right. So wherever we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute -1/4. I'm sorry, -4. So I get 3 times -4 divided by 2 minus 1/3 equal -4 divided by 3 minus 5. All right. Now, notice that 3 times a -4 is a -12, so we get -12 divided by 2 minus 1/3 equal -4/3 minus 5. Now, remember, you have access to a calculator, so if you use your calculator real quick, you all know that this is a -6, so just say this, -6 minus 1/3, okay, equal, and then you get this. Now, hopefully you know how to use your calculator. Now, in this particular calculator, which is what I asked you to use, but again, some of you may have your own calculator, just make sure you know how to use it. You can convert this to a mixed number. So let's see. See where it says PRB right here, and right above that, you have that blue button, and it says F to D. So to get to it, you have to press second, and then this right here, and notice fraction to decimal, decimal to fraction. Press enter, and you get -6 1/3. So this right here is -6 1/3. So let's see what this is. So let's go on this side and figure this out. So again, negative. So negative, here's your negative button. So -4 divided by 3 minus 5. Make sure you use the subtraction button, minus 5. And you could have said plus the -5, watch. So you could have said this, how it says subtract 5. You could have also said plus a -5. Because that's subtraction, remember, is the opposite. To change subtraction to addition, you add the opposite. So plus the -5, just like this. You get equal, and remember, now you know that you remember this from the previous one, so that's going to be, if you go further, you're going to see that you get the same thing, -6 1/3. All right, so that means that x equal -4 is a solution. Okay, so just know how to use your calculator. It does help you very quickly. Don't do this by hand. On a time test, just quickly use your calculator to verify. All right. Okay, so let's look at number 2. So this is going to be number 2. Okay, so number 2, I want you to notice that, again, you have a linear equation with fractions, and so you got to find the least common denominator. So if you look at the denominators, this is 4. Now, also notice there are 3 terms here. In the previous one, there were 4 terms. Here there are 3. 1, 2, 3. So this denominator is 4, this denominator is 2, this denominator is 3. So the smallest number that 4, 2, and 3 will divide into evenly is 12. So my least common denominator is 12. All right, now, just like in the previous problem, remember there were two terms here, so more than one term. So let's put that in parentheses. Here, there's only one term, so we don't need to put that in parentheses. In fact, I would not. I would just when I say parentheses, I mean this whole thing. I would just say times 12. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this over. X plus 2 divided by 4 minus 1/2 equal, and then 2x minus 1 divided by 3. And so let's put this in parentheses, because both of these terms, remember, the whole purpose of multiplying both sides by the least common denominator is to get these factors in the denominator to be 1s. So you want to clear those fractions. And so we multiply this by 12 and then this by 12. Okay, now, at some point, you need to be a little bit careful as you go along the way. So remember, don't reduce first. We talked about that, so you have to distribute first. Remember? Distribute first. So let's get rid of the parentheses by using a distributive property. So I have 12 times x plus 2 divided by 4 minus 12 times 1/2 equal, and then just leave this alone, so I'm just going to rewrite it, 12 times 2x minus 1 divided by 3. Okay, now let's reduce. So you use the distributive property, now we're going to reduce. So remember, the whole point of multiplying all these terms by 12 is to get this denominator to be a 1, and now you'll notice that it will be. 4 into 4 is 1. 4 into 12 is 3. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 12 is 6. 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 12 is 4. Okay? All right, now here's where you got to be careful. In the previous problem, I want you to notice all of these numerators were monomial factors. So those were monomials, a monomial. So 3x, 1x, 5. Okay? In this case, though, this numerator is a binomial. I have two terms here. Now, this is a monomial, but this is a binomial as well, right? Okay, so here's the next thing you got to be careful. If you're not careful, you're going to say that 3 times x plus 2 is 3x plus 2, and that's not true. That is not true. So what you need to do is notice that every term in this numerator has to be multiplied by 3. Every term in this numerator has to be multiplied by 6. Every term in this numerator has to be multiplied by 4. So let's go ahead and put, whenever there's more than one term, see how there's one term here? This is a monomial. This is a binomial. So when there's more than one term, put that in parentheses. So here's what I'm saying. Rewrite this as 3 times x plus 2 minus. Now you don't need it here because 6 times 1 is 6. Equal, and then rewrite this as 4 times 2x minus 1. If you do that, the chances of you making some kind of error will decrease dramatically. Now let's use the distributive property again in both cases. And so I have 3x, 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 6, equal 4 times 2x is 8x, and then 4 times a negative 1 is a negative 4. Okay? All right, let's combine like terms. Now, again, notice I don't have any fractions any longer. All my denominators are 1s, are factors of 1. So notice all these are factors of 1. Now, remember, you're solving this linear equation. There's no way you could have looked at this linear equation and determined the solution. So you're writing equivalent linear equations to get to the point where you can easily see what the solution is. And you really want to get to the point where you have x by itself. Okay, so let's combine like terms here. So notice that a positive 6 and a negative 6 is 0. So those become 0 when I combine those. And so I get 3x on this side. This, on the right side, there are no like terms, so we're just going to go ahead and rewrite this over. All right, so let's go ahead and bring the variables to the left. So I want to get rid of this 8x term that's on this side. Adding 8x is not going to help because 8x plus 8x is 16x. So you have to subtract. What I do to the left side, I only do it once. What I do to the right side, rather, only do it once. I do to the other side. So let's subtract 8x. So let's combine like terms. 3x and a negative 8x is a negative 5x. Okay? Equal, and then this is 0. 8x and a negative 8x is 0, and you're left with negative 4. Now let's go ahead and get x by itself. So right now I'm multiplying by negative 5. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 5 is to divide by negative 5. Okay, only divide by the coefficient. Don't put an x there because then you're going to say x equal, and that's not true, and that's what many students do. So many students will say, I'm just going to go ahead and put that on another sheet so you can see. It is very common. I see this quite often where some students are going to say, right here, they're going to say negative 5x divided by negative 5x equal negative 4 divided by negative 5x. And so they say that this right here is x. That's not true. This is not x any longer. This is anything divided by itself is 1. All right, so you got to be careful. So don't do that. Only divide by the coefficient. Don't divide by the variable. Okay? All right. So only divide by the coefficient. So that's going to be 1 now. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. 1 times x is x equal. And then don't leave it like this. We expect you to know that a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So the solution is 4/5. All right, and that's all you do. That's all this is. Okay, let's look at number 3. So number three, we have this. Okay, so we have this linear equation. Again, notice there are 4 terms here. So 2 terms on this side, 2 terms on this side. So I do have fractions, so I want to clear those fractions. So we're going to clear those fractions by multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. So the smallest number that 6, 3, and 2 divide into is 6. So let's write it down. So the least common denominator is 6. And so now I'm going to rewrite this equation. So let's go ahead and rewrite it. Leave a little space here. Oops, that's a plus sign. All right. Now again, as you go, you see where I almost made a mistake here and I wrote a subtraction. As you go, always make sure you're not making some kind of error with transferring to the next line. Okay. So let's put this in parentheses, put this in parentheses, and we're going to multiply both sides by 6. All right. Now again, be careful. Don't say 6 into 6 is 1, because then you're going to say 1 times 1 is 1, and that's not true. Every term has to be multiplied by 6, so you got to be careful here. So distribute first. Distribute first. Okay? So I get 6 times x divided by 6 minus 6 times 1 equal 6 times 5 divided by 3 plus 6 times 2 minus 3x divided by 2. So that's where I'm at. So every term, see this term, this term, this term, this term is being multiplied by 6. Now let's reduce. Remember, the whole point of multiplying by the least common denominator is to get these factors to be 1s in the denominator. 6 to 6 is 1, 6 to 6 is 1. 3 to 3 is 1, 3 to 6 is 2. 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to 6 is 3. All right, so do the work just like this. Be organized with your thought processes. Okay, so again, remember, this is a monomial in the numerator, this is a monomial, this is a monomial, but this is not a monomial. So at some point, I'm going to put this in parentheses. Okay, and you can do it now if you want to. If you want to put this in parentheses now, that's fine. So in other words, if you want to go ahead and do this, you can. Okay? All right, so I have 1 times x is x minus 6 times 1 is 6. So on the left side, I have x minus 6. On the right side, 2 times 5 is 10 plus, and then 3 times 2 minus 3x. Okay? Now let's go ahead and just use the distributive property here. So I get x minus 6 equal 10 plus 3 times 2 is 6, and then 3 times a negative 3x is a negative 9x. Okay, once you get to that point, let's go ahead and combine like terms. There aren't any like terms on the left side, so get x minus 6. On the right side, I have these two constants here. So 10 plus 6 is 16, so I get 16 minus 9x. All right, so that's where I'm at. Okay, so let's go ahead now and let's bring the variables to one side, constants to the other. So see how I'm subtracting 9x? Remember, the next thing is to add 9x. So I always do the opposite. What I do to the right, I do to the left, just like this. And then x plus 9x is 10x minus 6 equal. Now this, when I combine like terms, this is 0, so that's what you wanted here. You no longer have that x term on this side. You're left with 16. And then adding 6 to both sides. And then combining like terms, this is now 0. So you get 10x equal, what's that, 22? All right. And then the next step, remember, you got to get x by itself. So right now, multiplying by 10, the opposite of multiplication is division. So you can divide both sides by 10. And so 10 divided by 10 is 1. 1 times x is x. Now, don't leave it as 22 divided by 10. I need for you to reduce this. So reduce if you want full points, all your points. So they're both divisible by 2, so that becomes 11 divided by 5. And if you want to write this as a mixed number, you can. So 5 into 11. 5 into 11 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract, you get 1. So you get 2 and 1/5, right? So 2 and 1/5. All right, so that was number 3. So that's the solution number 3. So remember, what you're doing here is you're writing equivalent equations. So that's why you're using those properties of equality. You're trying to find the solution to the original by using the properties of equality to get equivalent equations. So all these equations have the same solution. So once you get to that point, you know the solution for x. X is 11/5. So that'll be the solution to this one, solution to this one, solution to this one, and so on. Okay? All right, now let's look at number 4. So number 4, we have this. Okay, so here's number 4. So notice there are 3 terms this time. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And notice my denominators are 2, this is a 1 right here, and then a 4. So my least common denominator is 4, correct? Least common denominator is 4. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this. Now, since there's only one term here, I'm going to leave this as what you see. And then let's go ahead and rewrite this over. So 3 minus x plus 3 divided by 4. And let's put that in parentheses since there's more than one term. And I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So you're going to say times 4 times 4, just like that. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and I'm going to leave this alone for right now, but I want to use the distributive property. So just do one thing at a time. Keep your thought processes in track here. Distributive property. Get rid of the parentheses, distributive property. There's only one set of parentheses that you see, and it's on the right-hand side. So I get 4 times 2x minus 3 divided by 2 equal, now let's distribute, 4 times 3, and then minus 4 times x plus 3 divided by 4, just like that. Okay, now let's go ahead and reduce now. Remember, the whole point of multiplying both sides by the least common denominator is to get these factors in the denominator to be 1s, the idea of clearing the fractions. So 2 and a 2 is 1, 2 and a 4 is 2. Over here, 4 and a 4 is 1, 4 and a 4 is 1. Okay? All right, now remember our processes, our thought processes from the previous problems. This is not a monomial, so we need to put this in parentheses. This is monomial, I'm leaving it alone. This is not a monomial, put that in parentheses. So in other words, and you can do it now or you can do it the next step. In other words, in the next step, you would say 2 times 2x minus 3, just like that, equal, we can do this now, this is 12, minus 1 times x plus 3, just like that. Now be careful, because this is where some of you are going to have that, if you make an error, hopefully you won't, but if you make an error, it will probably be in this little part here. All right, so be careful, just leave it as 1 and say minus 1 times this, okay? And if you do that, the chance of you making an error at this point will decrease dramatically. Now let's get rid of the parentheses, so use the distributive property, okay? And so I get 2 times 2x is 4x, and then 2 times the negative 3 is a negative 6, equal. Now be careful. Another error that somebody's going to make is you're going to say 12 minus 1 is 11, and then distribute 11. Remember, order of operations. You have to do multiplication. See, the distributive property is a multiplication idea. This is subtraction, so you got to do multiplication before you subtract, okay? So you got to be careful. Don't say 12 minus 1 is 11. You got to multiply first and then subtract. All right, so I get 12. A negative 1 times x is a negative x. A negative 1 times a positive 3 is a negative 3. So that's where I'm at. So we're getting to the point where I can find my solution. So let's combine like terms. There aren't any like terms on this side, so I'm going to rewrite it. Over here, it looks like I can combine these two constants. So 12 and a negative 3 is 9. So you get 9 minus x. All right, so now it's easy to solve. The rest of it is pretty easy now. So let's add x to both sides. See, I'm subtracting x, so the opposite is to add x. What I do to the right-hand side, I do to the left-hand side. And I'm just aligning my like terms. 4x and x, combining like terms, 4x and x is 5x minus 6 equal, this is 0 now, and I get 9. And then let's add 6 to both sides. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides and combine like terms. This is 0. So I get 5x equal 9 plus 6 is, what's that, 15? And then divide both sides by 5. And you see, all of you should see that a solution is 3, because 5 times 3 is 15. But let's go ahead and actually do that step. So let's divide both sides by 5. Remember 5, right? The coefficient. Don't say 5x. 5, the coefficient only. And so I get 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times x is x equal 3. Okay? Now what I want to do here now, so I found the solution to the original problem right here. But since that is a nice number to check, let's go ahead and check it. I just want to show you, just kind of remind you how to check x equals 3 to see if it actually is a solution to this. So let's check x equals 3. We're going to go back to the original problem right here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So I get 2x minus 3 divided by 2 equals 3 minus x plus 3 divided by 4. So that was the original problem. So I already see the variable x. Wherever we see the variable x, I'm going to substitute 3. So I get 2 times 3 minus 3 divided by 2 equal 3 minus, and then x, remember, I'm going to substitute 3 plus 3 divided by 4. Just like that, okay? So 2 times 3 is 6, right? And then 6 minus 3 is 3. So I get 3 halves equal 3 minus, all right, look at this. Only this now. See this right here? 3 plus 3 is 6. So I get 3 minus 6 fourths. Okay, now this is just one term here. So that's 3 halves, which you know is 1 and 1/2. So let's see what this is. So use your calculator. Use your calculator. So 3 minus 6 divided by 4. And look, you got 1.5. And you know 1.5 is 1 and 1/2. Okay? So both sides equal. So your solution is correct. All right. Now, again, before we end this, I want you to notice I need to see the steps just like this. I need to make sure that you are rationalizing your thought processes. You're not all over the place. I have to see what you're thinking as you go through the process, okay? So don't skip any steps. You want to get as many points as you possibly can. So show all of your thought processes to me. All right. And now you don't have to check, but so on all the problems that you have to turn in for a grade, just this is all you need to do. All right. Okay. So that is the practice problems for topic 1, part 2.